Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us this morning for a GCMA Inspire session. This is also known as Essential Leadership Skills, which is a series we started roughly 18 months ago. Today, our guest speaker is Gareth Morgan, who is the General Manager at Long Ashton Golf Club. I won't go into Gareth's long history, not that long, but I'll let him sort of talk you through that a little bit about his own experiences whenever it's his turn to present. I'm going to kick off the session this morning with just a little bit of a background for those of you who are new to the GCMA, just to find out a little bit about what we do. Buenos días de España. You're very welcome. We got somebody from Spain on this morning, so hopefully you're keeping good spirits over there as well. So I'm just going to share my screen and oh dear, there we go. Thought I'd lost it for a minute. So a little bit of history for the GCMA about who we are. The beginnings of the GCMA were back in 1933 with an association of golf club secretaries. Was the original name of the association, because that sort of reflected what the role was, what was more like back then. So we've been going for about 88 years, if my calculations are right. So obviously within that time, there's a lot of history and heritage that we've gone through, and hopefully we've learned a few things along the way that that hopefully we're beginning to pass on to our members, but also to people who are perhaps interested in the role of golf club manager. And the name of the association changed in 2007 to the Golf Club Managers Association, and that really reflected the role, the change in the role. It was less of a role where you were really at the behest of the committee and serving the committee, into more a leadership role within the club. So that decision was taken in 2007, and we haven't looked back since. We currently have a membership of around about 1,500 golf club managers, which if you take the UK as a whole, there's roughly 2,500 golf courses. So that's a very large percentage of the golf courses in the UK that has a GCMA manager. Now, perhaps we don't shout about that enough, and perhaps we will in the future. But I think that's certainly something to be quite proud of if you are a member. So what do we do? We've recently gone through a series of sort of strategic sessions looking at ourselves and just making sure that our sort of purpose, vision, and values are aligned throughout the association. That's along with our new CEO that came on in September. And we came up with these sort of three values. I think we're here to inspire our members, in their day-to-day roles to be the best that they can be. We're here to educate. We do have quite a large portfolio of educational products now. Beginning with the essential leadership skills, and after this, hopefully once we finish Gareth's presentation, we can have a look at some of the upcoming principles courses and that's sort of our entry level or developmental level, if you like. We also have coming a little bit later this year, hopefully. It's still in development, but we're looking at doing an advanced program for current general managers to hopefully get right to the top of their game. As regards formal education, we're in a golf club management partnership with the PGA and BIGA to deliver a level 5 Ofqual regulated qualification, which at the moment is the highest level of qualification in golf club management. Again, later on this year, we're hoping to launch a university degree in golf club management. We're involved with a university on that. So as regards formal education, we're quite heavily involved in that. And finally, informal education, which is really what today is a little bit about. a webinar series that we've recently launched. This one is GCMA Inspire, because it's really about good leadership, motivation, creativity, well-being. But we also have GCMA Know-How, which is the technical aspects of the role. And we have GCMA Hot Topics, which is really just to discuss the latest industry trends, etc. And finally, we represent our members. We've got a seat at the top table in golf, with RNA and all the other, England Golf, all the other major associations and governing bodies. We're also a member of the APPGG, which is, for anybody who likes their letters or acronyms, it's the All-Party Parliamentary Group for Golf, who had something to say yesterday evening in Parliament about asking when golf's going to come back. So that's really who we are, what we do, and as I said at the end of Gareth's presentation, I'll hopefully talk to you a little bit about the upcoming principles courses in February and March. So I shall unshare my screen there. I'm very, very glad to be able to hand you over to Gareth. Gareth is a member of the board at the GCMA, so he's very kindly given up his time for that, apart from being a working manager as well. So very grateful to Gareth for doing this for us today. And absolutely a very, very important topic on the well-being of your staff, and how that can possibly help productivity. But I'll let Gareth go into that. So let me just stop sharing there. And it's over to you, Gareth.
Thanks very much, Gavin. Good morning, everybody. Good to see so many of you here for the 9:30 shift today. Thanks to Gavin for the introduction. I will, once I start sharing the screen, just give you a little bit of information about myself and where I come from, to hopefully fill out maybe what qualifies me to speak to you on this topic this morning. What I would say is I've got a section at the end of each kind of section of the presentation, just a little bit where I'll answer any questions on that particular section, but please feel free to write them into the chat box at any point. I just won't answer them as we go. I'll answer them at the end of each section, so hopefully you can help me with that, Gavin. And I'm also interested in anything that anyone's got to say in this area, because I'm by no means a doctor of any of this, and I'm constantly learning as we go, same as everybody else. And as we'll get into in the early part of my presentation, a lot of the importance of well-being and this topic as a whole has become self-learned, and I almost stumbled upon myself in my career, because I think had you mentioned this kind of thing to me maybe 10 years ago, I may even have sort of rolled my eyes and scoffed a little bit at it, being a bit younger and a bit less wise and less experienced than I am now. So just one thing, I just want to ask, Jenny, are you warm enough? Jenny Smith's got a warm hat on here, and she looks like she's sat outside, so she's got a blanket. That's good. That's good. Thinking of your well-being, I am, you see, Jenny. Okay, I'm just going to share my screen with you now so we can get on to a little presentation that we put together for today. So I just want to check you can see that. How I go? Can we see that yet?
Yeah, that's looking good, Gareth.
Okay, so I'll just click into it now then. So. Okay, so we're just going to work through a few slides here. I'm going to minimize so you can see everything. So as I say, today the topic that we're looking at is looking after the well-being of your team, and thanks all for attending. So a little bit about me first of all. I've worked in the leisure industry forever. I'm 42 years old now. I've been in it since before I graduated. I graduated from Cardiff Metropolitan University in 2000, degree in recreation and leisure management. Went straight into some duty and assistant manager roles, health and fitness and family entertainment centres, before joining the glamorous world of the UK bingo industry in 2003, which is where I worked my way up and got my first general manager's role in 2005. So having done that for a couple of years, moved over into golf. Stumbled upon it really, although I've been a golfer of sorts, nowhere near the ability that some of you on this call in terms of playing ability. But since I was 8 years old, I was a member of a private members club in Cardiff, which I'm a member of today, and took a call from a recruiter and went along out of interest more than anything. And the rest is history. So I did 4 years at Rather Golf Club in Cardiff, and I've also worked before Long Ashton Golf Club, where I've been for 2 years now as the general manager of Craigie Golf Club, Cardiff Golf Club, and at Kingsdown Golf Club, which is in Wiltshire. I served for 8 years on the GCMA Wales Regional Committee, and I was regional captain in 2014-15. I've been a councillor for Wales Golf now since 2016. I'm in my second term, and I was delighted to be elected to the board of directors of GCMA last year. That's my immediate family. So my wife, I've got 2 kids. This was taken a good few years ago now. That very stroppy child in the red there is now 14 years old, so even more stroppy than he was in that photograph. And Jake, my eldest there in the dark blue, is now 23 and a master's graduate. So a bit different, but for reasons we'll probably get onto, there's not too many photos of us all together. That's why I used that one. So I do occasionally write a blog about golf management on that website that you can see there, and just started recording the second series of my golf management podcast. So I'm quite passionate about the job that I do. I'm a football coach. That's my hobby, and then as you can see, I've got all sorts of other roles that I hold here. So what is well-being? Because the first point I would make to everyone on this call is, whilst this session is looking at how to make sure the well-being of our team is as good as it can be, we need to understand what it is. And first and foremost, as we'll get on to very shortly, we definitely need to look after ourselves first, because if we're not doing that, we've got no hope of passing any of these things on. So in short, and the principle that we'll work to today is the UK Office for National Statistics definition of how we're doing as individuals, communities, and a society. And when you think of a golf club, we tick all 3 of those boxes. Individuals, as I said, we'll get on to now. Communities, which is what a golf club essentially is, and the society part of it, you can split that in 2, into staff and members, but they do also interact throughout, of course. So before I bring this next photograph up, I'd just like to tell you a little bit about why I speak on this topic now, and why it is something that I'm really keen to try and get into the staff that I work with, but also the friends that I have, just purely through my own experience. So the photo that I'm about to put up was taken in June of 2019. And that's me on the right, presenting a trophy there in my role as chairman of the local football club. We'd had a very successful season, and I have a big smile on my face there. And I think everything is great with the world. Until those photos were published. And I looked at that photo and I thought, my God, you know, talking specifically about my weight at the time, but I had, it was a bit of a shock to me, and it was a thing that made me sort of sit back and think, right, how have I sort of got my health into that kind of place? And unfortunately, a lot of it was to do with my work, but also the things that I was doing around work and in my own lifestyle as a result of the stresses and challenges of the job. So decided to make some changes. So my hours of work and home working, and I know without having to ask any of you that there will be people on this call whose hours of work and doing lots of work at home, and I don't mean because you can't go to the office at the moment, are very much part of things in your life. The culture of working in a golf club can be quite challenging at times, and especially if you're the GM, but also if you're a departmental manager or a person of responsibility. At times, I think it can be quite an isolated job. I certainly have found that for the last 15 years in golf club management it can be a lonely job at times. There's an expectation, I think, particularly from committees and boards, but also sometimes from the staff that work for you or even the members, that if they send you an email at 8 o'clock on a Saturday night, that they should be getting their reply at 8 o'clock on a Saturday night. And that you should basically be on call for them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We often have unclear objectives in golf clubs, or we have committees that want you to do one thing and then 3 or 4 people come on at the AGM. That all changes. And the biggest challenge, I think, in a golf club, particularly if you're there for quite a long time, is that the members and the people that you work with on the committee totally innocently forget that you are not one of them, that you're an employee and that you're protected by employment law and your contract and everything else. And I think all of the things above there, excuse me, can bring in some really, really bad habits into your life. Not necessarily into your work immediately, but they can bring in some really bad habits into your life. So the outcomes for me and for a lot of other club managers that I speak to on this now, I was definitely tired, constantly, physically and mentally. And, that in itself is a terrible place to start the day, isn't it? My biggest challenge this morning has been coming into work and finding that the coffee machine's empty and even me have no idea how to fill it. So that's the extent of my challenges nowadays with being tired. But if you're not physically and mentally rested, then the decisions that you make will be rushed, maybe not always thought through. And we'll get onto a little bit more about that shortly. Never switching off or recharging was definitely a problem for me. When your email is pinging all the time, day and night, and you're answering them, you're never really in the room that you're in. My wife would say to me sometimes, "You're here, but you're not really here," which obviously has a big effect on your family life. It certainly didn't help with anxiety that I would feel at the time. So an email comes in on a Saturday morning that you think, oh, this is going to be a nightmare to deal with now over the weekend or on Monday. Now spend the entire weekend worrying about that. And that did lead to a real big lack of job satisfaction for me. I felt like I was surviving in a job rather than getting through it. And as my photograph there that we've just seen will show, I certainly wasn't in very good physical health at all, which I subsequently found out when I started to put that right. So it came to a turning point for me personally, big decision. Should I stay or should I go in the industry? And I had a long, hard look at that. And I wanted to stay in this industry. I love it. It's kind of become not all I know, but almost all I know. And I've picked up a lot of relationships and experience over the years that I wouldn't really want to say goodbye to. So the things I wanted to really change was my health, obviously, which wasn't in a great place physically or mentally. So I removed a lot of the interruptions and notifications that are on those evil smartphones that we all carry around. And the first step for me was just removing notifications. So if there was an email from work, it didn't beep. So I would only read work emails when I made the decision to go into my work emails. That was the first step for me. I removed notifications from all my sort of work-related social media accounts, so that if there was a tweet into the Kingsdown Golf Club, as it was time, Twitter account, sorry, then I would not immediately be jumping on that. So if it was just enabling me to have some of my time back. Emails then went on to the next stage. I was very grateful to a good friend of mine who's a manager at Lanishan Golf Club, who won Team of the Year at the last conference, Martin Stevens, who told me that he doesn't have access to his emails from home. And I thought, right, well, I've already taken this step here to not have notifications, and Martin is very good at his job. They've been very successful there. If he can do it, I can. And I took that step. Hours of work, I stopped working at home. And that may sound wow to some of you. It certainly sounded it to me when I said I was going to do it. But what I find now is I get through my job list way quicker than I used to. A combination of all of these things, obviously, because of adding in exercise and time to myself. And I actually now started looking forward to weekends. How many of you have been able to do that for a while? This year, I know, can be a little bit different because a lot of us have been thrown out of things. But I have found that the changes that I made in advance of this last 12 months have absolutely carried me through it better than I would have been otherwise. I actually think sometimes I wonder what the last year would have looked like for me had I not made these changes. So that's more what I look like today. I'm still an ugly bugger, but I've managed to get myself healthier, and definitely not just on a physical level, mentally as well. So moving on to the most important thing, the people are on this call. So why should well-being in the workplace matter to me as a GM or as an aspiring GM or whatever the case may be? You know, if you're a department manager or a supervisor, this filters all the way down those staffing structures. So the obvious one, you know, reduce mental health concerns and associated sickness rates. So a few stats here. 31% of people suffer from mental health problems at some point. I think that would be more accepted as a statement nowadays than maybe it would have been 10, 15 years ago. 54% of people who suffer from mental health problems consider that their employer fails to support them well. And we'll get on to some of the reasons as to why maybe that may be. But only 43% of people suffering from a mental health challenge disclose it to their employer, teacher, or tutor. So over half of the people that are in our teams that are having some sort of struggle in this way are never going to tell us. So really important why we're obviously switched on to the importance of, you know, good mental health and well-being in the workplace. But also that is a really important thing to remember, is that the staff are not going to be beating our door down to come and tell us that they're struggling with this type of thing, because there is still a stigma around it. So if you want to look really hard and, you know, cold hard cash, the corporate cost of full mental health provision. So £1,400 per employee that is suffering with mental health. So if you've got 10 in your organisation, 14,000, and then you can do the multiples from there. You know that. So if you're in a huge company, I mean, what company in the world would want to give away 1.4 million? In a golf club environment, £1,400 for one employee is a significant chunk of change for a private members club especially. So why should it matter to me as a GM? So just a few bits of information here really. Experimental work shows that improving well-being can boost productivity by as much as 15%. I can tell you that I would add multiples to that in terms of my own productivity from obviously the short version of the story I've just given. Companies invest greatly in promoting the engagement of their people, but paying attention to well-being makes that engagement sustainable. Without it, burnout's a real risk. And I know some of you on this call, and we've had these conversations, and I've spoken to many golf club managers where this is the case. This year in particular, at times when we think back to some of the periods this year, so the start of lockdown, when we were coming out of that initial lockdown, when we went into the November lockdown, where we get really, really crucial information that's going to affect our everyday lives, and we have no time to deal with it and communicate it or absorb it or anything else. So if you were in a bad place to start with, this kind of situation is the thing that can send you over the edge. Impaired well-being often manifests as mental ill health, which is now the main cause of sickness absence in much of the world. And I think that statement has probably been played out across the world this year. And it's now thankfully something that we are talking about just in everyday life a little bit more, but there's still a way to go, I think, in terms of employers, and particularly in members golf clubs. So presenteeism is even commoner with reduced well-being and is estimated to cost to businesses at least 1.5 times their absenteeism bill. And for those who don't know what presenteeism means, that the definition is it's the practice of being present at one's place of work for more hours than is required, especially as a manifestation of insecurity about one's job. Now, when I first read that definition, I thought, was that written for a golf club manager? So present at one's place of work for more hours than is required being an important word, I think, in our role, especially as a manifestation of insecurity about one's jobs, because we are the guys as the GMs of the golf clubs that everyone shoots at, because we're the guys that deliver the bad news, we're the people that have to disappoint people sometimes, and people just want someone to blame, don't they? So organizations promoting well-being for their people are 3.5 times more likely to be creative and innovative. So you've got happy work people who are not just going through the motions, coming into work, fulfilling their shifts and going home. And you know, as I say, I can vouch for my own productivity, and the ideas that I now generate are far greater than I used to. Customer experience is strongly correlated with the well-being of the employee with whom they interact. You know, it doesn't take a genius to work that out, really, does it? But if you've got somebody that's dragging themselves into work and barely making it in, then their interactions with your customers and your members, the people to whom your business relies on, really, are not going to be as positive and as straight. I mean, we've all done it. You know, we walk into the kitchen in a bad mood and have an argument with our mother, our spouse, our son, or whatever the case may be. And it's not actually that person's fault that argument's happened. We were just in a rotten mood to start with. It obviously translates into the workplace. Millennials and subsequent generations are motivated less by money and look to work for organisations that foster their well-being. And I struggled with that sort of concept when I first came across it, but there's been significant research done on that now. So, you know, whereas in years gone by, it just would have been, you know, well, they paid this much, or we can give them this much pay rise. People of a certain age now are very much more interested in what their working environment is going to be like and how it's going to, you know, make them feel, that sort of thing. So I thought now would be a decent time to pause for any questions. Do we have any so far, Gavin? Because I've not got anyone on my screen at the moment.
No, nothing in the chat box at the moment. I just thought it was, you know, really good that you went through what the presenteeism, absenteeism, and presenteeism is. You know, obviously, if we are talking about productivity and people's well-being, then, you know, obviously the more that they're at work, then that helps productivity. But also that, you know, they're there for the correct amount of time and they're not overdoing it. So I thought that those are really good points. Did get somebody? Stephen's just saying hello to everybody, so that's it's not a question, hello, but it's nice.
maybe he's already typing something else. That's fine. Well, look, if someone is typing a question that doesn't hit, we can come back to it in the next little pause that we take anyway. So just want to get, if we move on, I just want to get to some theory about this. And the strange thing about this, when I started reading into this kind of topic, which I'm a reluctant reader at the best of times. I'm a consumer of podcasts and audiobooks. But when I started sort of reading into the journey that I was maybe halfway through, when I started reading into well-being, mental health issues and that sort of thing, it was very much a case of, oh blimey, I've actually ticked that box, and I've ticked that box without actually having a plan to go along this kind of journey. So I wish I'd known this stuff at the start, because I may have achieved it a bit sooner and a bit quicker. So we'll move on to the next slide. So you've got to, first things first, we've got to identify barriers. So what are the barriers to us feeling the way that I described that I now do generally in my work? and just have a think about what barriers exist for you, because that was the starting point for me, really, was, excuse me, was that this is how I look and feel. I don't want to, but understanding how it got to that point for me was really important. And I've still got the list that I made at home of all the things that I treated as my barriers. But also in terms of the team and for others we know. So what was a barrier for you working in a golf club environment may not be the same barrier for someone else. They may have a completely different barrier. I once worked with a clubhouse manager a long time ago. She's not on this call, so she won't be offended. She was in, when I started working with her, she was in a constant state of believing that the members and the committee wanted to get rid of her. And it took me, to my discredit, about 18 months to grasp that was her problem, because we had several issues with her. But nothing could have been further from the truth. The members knew and appreciated the very good job that she did. And the committee at no point ever discussed anything about her performance or any concerns they had with her. But in her mind, that she could lose her job next week. And she spent her whole working life feeling that way. I should have spotted that quicker and should have got to the bottom of that quicker. And I'd like to think that if that happened today, I'd be able to obviously help her and help the situation in terms of the workplace a lot sooner. So you need to build a sustainable new approach. So first of all, self-awareness. So it starts with you, as I've said. So then self-regulation, then self-management techniques. So think back to my case study. Some of you may have gone through similar journeys where you can also relate to these different stages. So self-management techniques. So, you know, removing the notifications, removing completely the email from your phone, which, you know, that was massive for me, taking that step. Some of you may even think that's a step too far for me. I couldn't quite do it. You could, I promise you, and it will change your life. Social awareness. So obviously aware of what's around us as well. And, you know, we're moving through this. There's no way you can get to social awareness before you've sort of dealt with yourself. Social support, what I would say, that goes two ways. So supporting outwards, but also supporting inwards. I've had some really tough periods in my career as a golf club manager, and the support that I've received has been probably the thing that has kept me sane, kept me going at the time. I now try to pay that back when I see other people struggling, and social management being the final point there. So you've got to try and build these sustainable new approaches to the way that you apply yourself, and then obviously moving on to your team. So just quickly move through this sort of ever-going cycle here to achieving optimal well-being. So we'll go fairly quickly through these points because I don't want to bog us too much down in the sort of the detail of it. But it's, you know, this is a scientifically proven process model. So science tells us if we get our brain management right, we're far more likely to get everything else right. I doubt anybody would debate that point. And emotional well-being influences our overall well-being. So it's the primary driver of everything really that we do, every beneficial change in our brain and everything else to do with health. We're just moving through these very quickly. So physical activity. Personally, for me, that has been the biggest change in my life in the last 2 years, has been physical activity. I was previously a competitive athletic person, several sports as a young man, got an injury in my mid-20s, which then stopped me for a while. But I jokingly say that I took my 30s off. It's not actually funny that I did it, but that was one of the sort of the walls that I used to put up, was that I took my 30s off after I retired from sport. So I reintroduced that into my life, and it's a big part of my routine now. Even when it's chucking it down with rain, even when the gyms are now shut, which has been a big pull for me, it remains a big part of my everyday routine. So there are obviously many many positives to it, but it can be transformational. Focused methods of movement that facilitate positive change in both body and mind. Some places have got on-site provisions for this. Some golf clubs have got gyms and everything else. Are the staff allowed to use those gyms? In some cases, I know, no, they're not. In some cases, it's actively encouraged. We don't have a gym at Long Ashton. If we did, I would be almost making it compulsory that we try and get some exercise into people, just because of the benefit that it can bring. Lots of places of work have off-site associations, so it's something I've started looking into here. We have a David Lloyd's club just down the road from us. Can we put something in place in terms of some sort of offer for our staff to be able to get some sort of corporate membership there, very reduced rates, which would then give them the opportunity to go through, a bit more physical activity. It's got to be accessible to all. If we need to work with flexible working to allow this to happen, somebody who's maybe been struggling a little bit could really benefit from going to a yoga class at 8:30. Does it impact our day that much to let them start work at 9:30 and work half an hour later in the day or an hour later in the day? In reality, no, it doesn't. It doesn't change too many people's worlds to make that happen. But the difference it could make to that individual and the team and our customers as a result of that could be huge. And can we make it an ongoing commitment? So I'm touch wood 2 years in now nearly, and I'm thankfully maintaining this as an ongoing commitment, even though I've had to do silly things like convert my loft bedroom into a temporary gym while the gyms are closed. But I've made that commitment myself, but not everyone will be that far along in the process. Rest and recovery is an area that I referred to earlier on, and too many of us in the golf industry do not rest, and we do not recover, and we don't have days off, and we don't have weekends. It sometimes can sound a little selfish, and your staff won't quite grasp it, particularly if you're in a new club when you're going through this transformation like I was. But if you email me on Saturday morning, you will not get a reply to that email until I return to work. People have my mobile phone number, so if there's an emergency, that's the job. So if there's the leaky roof on a Saturday and it's dripping into the clubhouse, or there's an alarm call out and it's a confirmed intruder, or the classic one is the clubhouse is on fire. Everyone who needs my mobile phone number is and are expected to phone, no issue. But an email about someone's handicap change being wrong, it's not important enough to not have the rest and the recovery. You need to recharge. The work patterns, as I say, in the timeout area there are really important. Do you have an area in your clubhouse or in your business where staff can go and not be interrupted and not be working? We're all guilty in this industry of sitting at our desks eating a sandwich while replying to an email, aren't we? So it's really important. Managing of stress is hugely vital to everything that we do. And again, can you offer some things on site? Some of us have got spas and these types of things on site. We don't at Long Ashton, unfortunately. Is it something that a lot of schools do now, that they can organise things like Wellbeing evenings, where they have some of these people come in just for the staff? So all things that you could be thinking about now, ready for when the world is normal again, in inverted commas. So optimum nutrition, one of the biggest problems I found when I was, living 100 miles an hour and never really stopping, was I'd just grab at food and whatever it was that would fill me up and smelt nice and whatever, and never a thought to the nutrition or the, any of the sort of nutrients that my body needed to try and even attempt to live the life I was living. So again, what advice can we give to our staff along these lines? And one of the things I'm looking at incorporating here now for our staff is that we've got an online training portal that we've signed up to that we're now going on to, and there is some of this on there, and we are going to make it one of the training courses that we expect our staff to go through, just to give them the understanding You know, you can lead a horse to water and all that. On-site catering. Do you have staff discounts? Is there a healthy eating option at your club? Here at Long Ashton, I'm very lucky to have the team that I've got here in the clubhouse. Before I started here, they already had a healthy eating menu. You know, is it heavily discounted for staff to make it affordable 5 days a week, that kind of thing? And the branded water bottles. So, you know, the easiest thing in the world, most of us sell them in the pro shop. Can we not dish them out to the staff? You're encouraging them to drink more water, essentially, aren't you? Very small little things, and in isolation, they won't change the world. But doing a lot of these things together, the important things. So, recruitment and appraisals. I'm not ashamed to say, because I think it's an important learning thing, that just before Christmas, here in my own job, because we hadn't had appraisals, because they were due to happen in March and the world went crazy, I actually found that I had a member of staff who is a superstar in this club, who didn't even know whether we thought she was doing a good job. That's unforgivable for me, no matter what happened over the last year. But look at the sort of damage to that person's well-being that particular incident could have created, had they not had the sort of had it about them to come and have a chat with me about it. So thankfully now that person knows just how valuable they are to us. But it's also a reminder, constant reminder that we can always do better, and that people need the feedback that comes in appraisals. It's not always the thing that they dread. Appropriate demands to challenge whilst avoiding stress. So yeah, we still need to stretch people. We still need to challenge people. We still need to just try and get that extra 5% out of people as managers, but not putting it on them like a ton of bricks. You know, learning and development opportunities. One thing I'm doing here at the moment is we're using the period of furlough for a lot of these the clubhouse staff to put them through some training courses that frankly we should have put them through sooner. So they're able within that scheme to obviously have a top up to their wages to 100%, but we're also upskilling them while they're at home feeling frustrated and bored and wishing that they were back in work. And succession planning. So, you know, if somebody leaves, is there a natural heir to that position that you can promote from within? I'm really, really passionate about promoting from within, because had my company back in the early 2000s not had a policy of that, I may never have got that first general manager's job and my life may have looked different. But that in itself is a very positive thing to work with somebody on, because they know that they're working towards something and they're not in some sort of dead end situation. Emotional management. Emotions motivate us to act. Important thing to remember. Influence our decision making, play a vital role in interpersonal communication, and they help us to survive. I don't think that needs a great deal of explanation at that point. Emotional well-being influences our overall well-being, the primary driver of all beneficial changes in the brain, and all other areas of health once you go on from that. And this is probably the area I think that us as GMs and I hope through the GCMA we'll be able to get a lot more training on moving forward, because I think looking back historically we've done a lot on, you know, food and beverage management, contract management and everything else. But getting this part of managing our teams right is going to be the thing I think that can really elevate people and elevate clubs and find people staying within the golf industry for their whole careers, rather than it being something they maybe drop in and out of. Socialization is an important one. There needs to be a supportive culture, and there needs to be an opportunity on site and off site for people to socialize. So an area that we're working towards here is that, as I mentioned earlier on, space that the staff can go to, that is their space, that they're not with members, but they're not working either. You know, some of us who've worked for big corporate companies at some times, they've all got staff rooms, haven't they? And the team building and the bonding and the sort of sharing of information, the just sharing of experience that can go on in those environments is quite often lost in golf clubs, where you've either got to go and sit out with members, or God forbid you don't take a break at all because there's nowhere to go. Or the worst one I've seen about 10 years ago was seeing the trend that staff would go and sit in their car alone to eat a sandwich. And I think that's the ante of everything that we want to try and achieve. So off-site, I think, is important. When I started working here, for example, there'd been a history of the team never even getting together once a year for a Christmas party, because the food and beverage operation were really busy, so they'd sort of go out somewhere together in January, but the greenkeepers wanted a good drink just before Christmas. So what we did this year, and ironically we lost the date because of COVID, was 14 months previously we put the date for the Christmas party in for the 18th of December or whatever it was, and no bookings were permitted that day. That day was being dedicated to the staff Christmas party, and nothing was going to be more important. No matter who wanted to book a dinner or a lunch or a meeting or anything else, there were no bookings for that day, because it shouldn't be the only time that you do it that year, but you need to take that time to reflect and say thank you to the staff, and just let everyone be together, really. And finally, synergy. Through combinations and associated synergies that have proven improvement to well-being can successfully be achieved. Successfully. So we've worked around the circle there. I've obviously interjected with a few examples from my own experience at the moment. We'll always be very interested to hear anything anyone else has done along those lines, really. I don't know if we had a question pop up just after I started this bit, Gav, so it may be from the last section, I don't know. But are there any questions on anything we've just spoken here before we move on to the last little bit, which is my sort of top 10 tips?
The question that came through was really from Stephen. Was really just about the GCMA and if we have any policy documents regarding well-being. I think it's something that's actually really good to look into, because we don't currently. Obviously, we've put on well-being workshops for members in January. We've put well-being in all of our training and education programs. It's right at the center, and I think it runs through everything that we do now, almost to the point where hopefully it's going to become part of our DNA. But I think it's certainly worthwhile having that. And thank you very much, Stephen, for the comment, but also for the tip on where to look for something like that. There's another new message come through from Ed. Do you have a budget set aside for staff welfare, or do you have any clear, or do you have to clear any spending in that area by your board? Very good question.
It is a good question. I'll deal with Ed's first, because I'd like to come back to Stephen actually, just to ask him a question on that. Yes, it's not a budget line, Ed, here, but for example, it's I mean, like a lot of us, we've got admin sundries is a cracker, isn't it? And it makes it look like the office is spending 50 grand a year on paper. But on that line, what I do when I pass my budget every year through the committee, there's obviously the P&L line by line, expenditure line by expenditure line. The second page of that document is always an explanation as to what is in that budget. And the budget is month by month as well. So it's written, this is how much we'll spend in January, February, and so on. And every line will have an explanation next to it as to why that figure is what it is. And I will always say in there that in this line, there is X amount in here for the staff Christmas party. There's X amount in there for this. There's X amount in here for that. So when that document gets sent out to my committee, maybe a week to 10 days in advance of when they're going to be asked to approve it or amend it, I will stress that the detail in page 2 is absolutely crucial to what you're doing, because, and I do say to them, please don't come back in 6 months' time asking why have we spent £2,000 on X when I've written it in the budget here. Now is the time to question any of these issues. So that is highlighted in that. So once they approve the budget in February to start in April, the Christmas party's already approved, as long as I stay within those financial parameters. Because as well as me, Ed, you don't want to be going to have that conversation in November and have them debating, should we give 250 quid or 275 for half an hour? It's in the budget, and if they want to debate it, the debate would be in February when they're a little bit less passionate about it. than, you know, when I'm asking for some money to spend in 3-4 weeks time. And then of course the staff and the team that put that night together then know what they're working with, don't they? Because it's always been a big bugbear of mine that where my wife works, that, oh, we're having a Christmas party and we're going here, and yeah, so I've got to pay 50 quid by Friday. Just think, it's your staff party, you know, you're not paid huge money. Are they not contributing anything? No, we've got to pay for it ourselves. So it's an area I've always felt quite strongly about, and I've been lucky to work for a couple of clubs that were already in the habit of making sure that they did a proper staff party at Christmas, for example, but it can be any time in the year. So it's budgeted, is the short answer. It's budgeted at the start of the year, and once they approve the budget, I'm not hiding it in a budget. It's detailed in there, and if they pass it, then it's good to go, like anything else here. On what Stephen was mentioning there, do you have any access, or have you seen any examples of that, Stephen? Because I think what Gavin said is right, is that we're probably in the infancy of it, of formally talking about these things in training circles, but if anyone's got any of these documents, I think they could be absolutely crucial things to share.
I actually do have a document from another company, Gareth. I won't mention it here. It's a worldwide brand. They employ 50,000 people, so it's obviously an issue that they've taken extremely seriously. So we perhaps do have a template to work from on that, but certainly appreciate the comment. And the one thing I would say that the rapid recharge, just really taking advantage of the fact that we have Fabrizio from Spain here, also known as a siesta. I think, you know, if you do get half an hour just to close your eyes and have a lie down, I think that does help keep your energy levels sort of high for the rest of the day. But that was the only thing I had for you, Gareth.
I think that in itself is an interesting thing, isn't it? Because when I used to attend some things about this before I had my own epiphany, but you know, some of the suggestions that I would hear, I would almost laugh at. You know, now imagine saying to your committee, listen, for half an hour a day, I'm just going to shut the office door and I'm going to have a sleep. I mean, can you imagine how that would be received in our golf clubs? So, you know, but every person is different, and there might be somebody on this call that just doing that, because that's no different to going to a staff room and eating your lunch on your own, is it? But I think everybody is different. Not everyone is going to want to go and run 5 miles 5 times a week and be in the gym 6 mornings a week. That would be the worst thing for their mental well-being. You know, not everybody is like me, but you know, to other people, just needing more sleep or needing more time to relax, or just, you know, how many times recently, especially since closure, have you gone out and walked 6 of the holes just to see what's going on out there, or to be seen by the greenkeepers out there, or whatever the case may be? But that physical walk in itself, and fresh air and just a break from the screen, could be the one thing that sort of improves your day. And I think the one thing I've sort of learned over the last couple of years is that, you know, the less weighed upon I have felt, hopefully then transforms over into the conversations and the relationships I have with the rest of the team. So there's no more questions on that. We'll just move into the last little phase then, which is just my you know, so your scope of responsibility is by, you know, building, engaging, supporting communities, because, you know, as a golf club GM, none of this will happen without you. The team below you may try and get something like this going, but unless it has the support up to you, right through to the question that Ed just asked about budgets and things like that, it will be very difficult to get these things off the ground. So it's really important that you know, that we understand what our responsibility is in this sort of area. So back to the thing earlier on, so we're looking to break down and remove the barriers. But one of the most important things about that, as I mentioned earlier on about that case that I had before Christmas myself here through my own mismanagement of that particular work relationship, was that no communication there. So okay, there was no appraisal, but I spent Christmas thinking about that, just thinking, how did that key member of staff that does such a good job not know that I thought that? And I you know, I've reflected on that a lot, because I, you know, sort of prided myself in this for so long, and You know, I still probably don't fully have the answers to it, because the easiest thing in the world would have been to say, oh, Gareth, it's been a mad year. That's not good enough. You know, that person's got their own life and their own well-being. That's my responsibility. So I need to be more, you know, awareness and understanding of the fact that, you know, communicating and communicating what people are doing well. Don't assume that they're, just because they're a confident person, they know they're doing well in their job. There's always a bit of cognitive bias involved, especially in the golf club environments. But, you know, just openness and curiosity. It doesn't come naturally to me to just ask someone how they are. But it's actually a really important question to ask. I've got a greenkeeper here at the moment working on his own, because the other 4 are all isolating for different reasons. Now, that has got potential for the 8-9 day period that particular member of staff is working alone to have a profound impact on his mental health if he was already kind of struggling. So I'm making sure that I check in with him all the time. I go down and see him when I know he's having his break and that sort of thing, just so he has some interaction, really. But, you know, just how are you? Just asking that question, really. And mentally healthy conversation involves listening with a non-judgmental mind and focusing on listening. So when someone comes to you with, oh, I'm struggling, I'm this, I'm that, you don't need to give them the answers. Sometimes, or a lot of the time, they just need to be listened to, really. So 10 steps to improve team member well-being. So, and these are my personal top 10. It's because I did have a list of 20 odd, but I thought, no, that's probably too many. So make recognition part of your team ethos. So it's particularly important in an industry where recognition can sometimes be hard to come by. And I think I would tie into this as well. Try as best you can to know and realize that as a golf club GM, you need to tell your chairman particularly, or your captain, or whoever it is that you report to, that this actually is important to you as well. The case study I always remember is the first golf club I worked for. We did a huge job of a financial turnaround over a 2.5-3 year period. We increased the membership by 100. We dramatically increased our green fee income. It was the first positive financial performance the club had had for many years. And at the AGM, a member stood up and said, I would just like to say this is an unbelievable turnaround. We've done tremendously well. I think we should all give a round of applause to the treasurer. and I'm there sat at the end of the table thinking, the treasurer? He just counts it. He didn't do any of this. This was the staff. This was the team. So the team wasn't going to get the recognition necessarily that it should have got. But the team that worked with us at the time there, thankfully, we were in an environment where we were making sure that we recognized all the victories that the various departments had had. But it's an easy thing to forget. Very, very easy. And it's very easy to forget that we work in an environment where they get kicked a lot, but they don't always get the recognition and praise. So provide line managers with the policies and frameworks they need, but allow them the freedom to carry out their roles in their own individual way. That's probably my number one. I hate having someone looking over my shoulder all the time. I want guidance on what people want me to deliver, and I want them to leave me alone to do it, not be jumping in every 5 minutes saying, how are you doing it? How are you doing it? That's very much the approach I like to take with my line managers, is that this is what we want to deliver. You know, what resources do you need for that? Do you need any support on that? Are you adequately trained for that? Once they're happy, off they go, and they report into me in the same way that I report into my chairman. I think that in itself gives people the freedom to think that they are contributing and that their ideas are valuable. They obviously have to know the parameters and they have to know the rules and the reporting lines. But once you set that system up, it can really see people thrive. Organise away team meeting days to inform and seek ideas from your team members would be my third tip. We started doing this here at Long Ashton last year. It was an away day, and we were an entire day over at one of our local neighbour clubs. So we gave them a bit of income for the day with lunch, and the club paid for lunch and everything for the day. Just a team building day, but more than that, it was almost like a, you know, financial update. This is where we are, and each area had a couple of employees there, their most senior employees. And they put their ideas into the meetings, but sometimes it was an opportunity for me, for example, to explain to the greenkeepers why we couldn't do some of the things they wanted to do, because they were being told the answers in the context of, and this is where we are financially at the moment, and this is our financial performance. There was more understanding of how each department impacted on each other, but also why we couldn't do things sometimes, rather than them just thinking the evil committee didn't want to do it, you know. All four, introduce mystery golf schemes. So anyone who follows me on social media, on any of my accounts, would know that I'm particularly passionate about this, and we've seen huge success in this in terms of achievement for the staff here, but also recognition for the staff that work here at Long Ashton Golf Club. We go through 59 Club, which is a mystery shopping company along with everything else in the golf industry. Yeah, we've won a couple of awards and everything else, but awards aside, the mystery shopper reports that we receive, we'd improved month on month on month on month across the club. So I already knew that we had a good food and beverage operation, and the service in the pro shop was pretty good, and that we had good facilities and everything else. There were areas that we were really poor at, you know, such as taking the inquiry call. And over time, we're still not perfect, but we're building and building and building, and our scores in those areas are getting higher. We've put the responsibility for improving the scores onto the departments to which each section relates, and they've come up with the ideas. And then when they get the success from that of the improved results, and some of them are now starting to win some more awards and be nominated for other things, it gives them the recognition for it. But if I just walked down there with a script and said, I'm imposing this script on you, you must do this to improve our mystery shopper scores, not a very good thing for mental well-being of the employee who's just being basically told, do this. And I'm not even going to tell you why, but they have no ownership in it either. Number 5, ensure employees take the time off and the days off that they are due or need. And there will be some people on the call that think that's a really obvious point to make. From 15 years in golf, in 5 golf clubs, I can tell you it's not. My head greenkeeper here, James, who does some training for the GCMA, so you may see him on training courses if you haven't already. James would live here if I let him. He's a very passionate guy. He absolutely loves what he does. His hobby is his job, and I have to force him to take holiday days. And whenever there's something crop up on a weekend or something and there's a problem, oh, well, I'll do it. No, James, no. You don't work weekends unless it's an emergency. You know, manage your team to do it. You know, take your days off, James. He's, as I say, he's very good at his job, so that's why I'm able to talk about him in this presentation. But you will all have worked with somebody like that over the years. And the easiest thing as a GM is to think, oh, well, I'll let them then, you know, because I'll get more hours of work done on whatever it is they're working on, whether it's a chef or whatever. But eventually those people will end up, like me, in that football presentation photo, thinking, oh, I've hit a wall here. Number 6, urge sick employees to stay at home. And I'm not just talking about COVID, because when you're talking about mental well-being, there's nothing worse than dragging yourself into work because you think, you know, your boss would want you to, or things will be said about you, excuse me, if you don't come into work. If you're ill, take the time, because we want you back refreshed, and also not spreading it around the workplace either. COVID has probably heightened our senses to that, but that is true even outside of COVID times. And again, in golf, we work with small teams, and there'll be people sitting there shaking their head at me now saying, it's not always practical. You know, if I don't do it, if I have a day off, no one's going to do it for me. All of those things are true. So now that you know that, what can you put in place today when you're healthy, that next time you're sick, or that one of your line managers is sick, that they are able to take the day off that they need? Number 7, encourage the team to meet socially outside of working environments. And I've added the asterisk there, inclusive, because this can become counterproductive. So we encourage them to meet outside of a working environment. but it can't just be the click. It's got to be open to everybody, and then people can choose whether they turn up to it or not. It can be counterproductive if you have, you know, the clubhouse team are going out, but the 2 of the waitresses are not invited, or one of the people is not invited because they never turn up anyway. That can compound a problem that maybe is already there in the team, but also in an individual's well-being. Number 8, ensure that members of the team understand that they're expected to ensure that they keep a positive work-life balance, even if they don't always want to. So that goes back similarly to taking days off. But I constantly have conversations with people who are, oh, well, I could just do this at home. And, I've got a great part-time employee here who'll say, oh, I'll do that at home. No, you'll do it in your hours of work. And quite sometimes a lot of my emails to these people will say, when you're next in the office, can you blah, 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 because otherwise I know they'll access that email from home and they'll do it on Saturday afternoon when they should be with their family. Number 9, discourage team members from using work emails on days and evenings off. I've obviously already spoken at length about my own experience with that, and I'm not exaggerating when I say it changed my life. So if anyone wanted to get in touch with me afterwards and ask me the wider implications of how I made that happen, because it's not as simple as just taking it off your phone and to hell with the world. There are steps you need to go through. But if anyone would like me to talk more about that, obviously pop it in the questions box. But you can't do that yourself and then expect the rest of your team to be answering emails at all times of the day and night. And finally, avoid calling team members on their periods of annual leave. We are swines for this in the golf industry. It's a week off, but I'll just call him and check and ask where that key is, where that file is, where this is, where that is. Don't do it. These people need their breaks. I need my break. If the phone rings and it's a member of staff when I'm on holiday, I'm fairly confident they know now that this better be serious. It better not be, where's the key to this that they could have found out from somewhere else, or just why do I ask, what should I do on this? People need their breaks. And again, it's an area that I used to be abysmal at enforcing myself. Any questions on that little section before we just wrap up very quickly for a couple of minutes after that? I'm still muted, Gav.
Yes, sorry. Question from Heather. What was the reaction of your board of directors to your changes? Were they supportive or did they require education and enlightenment?
Okay, well, it's in terms of the changes to myself. I mean, one of the ones I've referred to there is email. So as I said, you can't just say, right, email's off my phone, because if they've been used to you replying all day, all night, weekends, if they email you 9 o'clock on a Saturday night, they'll get a reply. You need to sort of say to them, and I waited until there was a meeting to make these changes. From tomorrow, just so that you know, I'm taking email off my phone. This is why. I didn't need to go too in depth as to why. I said that, I'm just finding that I'm not switching off, that I'm not as effective as I could be in work, and sell it to them in that way, because I don't feel I'm ever recharging my batteries. And I mean, my chairman at my last club used to text me on all day, or any time of the day and night, and I would reply. So I actually just stopped replying to those text messages until work hours. So I didn't even tell him about text messages or anything, because then what it developed over time was, because it was a chairman I worked closely with, was he could text me any time of the day or night, no problem. Like I can email any of you any time of the day or night. I'm not expecting a reply from you until you're back in work, and that's the bit you need to get to. So it's really important that you do tell your board, your committee, your chairman, whoever it is that you need to tell that, look, this is a change I'm making and this is why. It's not to devalue anything that I've maybe done before, or to detract from the job that I'm going to do for the club, but I need this to be as effective as I can be in the workplace. And, most people on committees and chairman and everything else have worked in an environment where that would have been the case. And again, it's that line of they forget you're not one of them. So you're an employee with hours of work and contract of employment. So each of you would have a different relationship with your chairman, with your committee and everything else. My committee were very receptive to it, but then you've got to make that work then. You've got to show that works, you know. So you've also got to be confident enough for them all to have your mobile number. So everyone on committee and all the staff have got my mobile number now. So if there is ever anything that they deem to be an emergency, then you know, it's they're going to be able to phone you. Not say, well, I couldn't get hold of you. You've got to put these things in place. You've got to tell your staff that this is what you're doing now and why. And like I say, encourage them to do the same if you've got any of these people that don't operate in that way. You've got to put the things in place. And all I did for the members of that club was quite simply that I just put my out of office reply on over weekends and in the evenings. And it would just say, I'm out of office now, I return tomorrow morning, I'll reply, blah, blah, blah. And it's just a matter of just ticking it, isn't it? Taking it off when you come in the following morning. So then the member knows they've had the reply. They know you're not replying till the following morning, because there may be members that are used to you replying to them at 11 o'clock on a Saturday night. So you've got to manage the process, but I'm not exaggerating. I'm really grateful to Martin Stevens who gave me that final nudge with that. It changed my working life, definitely.
Yeah, sorry, I just come in on that, Gareth. It's certainly something I can relate to. And it really is a question of that sort of discipline as well, of just being able to know when to shut off. But I certainly, in my previous role as GM, had a very good working relationship with a course manager, but they were third party, they were subcontracted. So when I'd be doing tours of the golf course and finding little bits and pieces that I'd like improving, I'd send them a WhatsApp message. And it could be quite late on when he's already finished work, and he'd reply. So I had to sort of go to him and say, listen, if it's okay with you, I need to send you those little messages at the time because I'm seeing it, and but please don't reply. Don't reply until the next day, because if I don't send it to you in the moment, you know, I didn't have the correct sort of working procedures to note everything down and send them an email with it. That was sort of a little bit too difficult. So yeah, so it's that discipline, but also respecting other people's time off work.
Absolutely, and like I say, I'm not exaggerating. It changed my life. So I'd just like to finish really with a couple of steps. So some positive steps then. So I'm not asking any of you to share it, and you can wait until you're obviously off this call, or wait until you're having a cup of tea or something later on. But just try and list 3 things that you'll do this week to improve your personal levels of well-being. Could be a tiny little thing, right up to what Gavin's mentioned earlier on of having a siesta, so that you're going to put that in place. But with any of the changes you make, you can't just do this in isolation. You've got to share it with your team and with your committee at the very least, so that they understand the changes you're making and why. Otherwise, it will just be, I mean, can you imagine you don't say anything? In the office that I'm sat in here today, I shut the door, I lie down on the floor, start sleeping, and then all of a sudden the bookkeeper goes for a cup of coffee later on and can hear snoring in here. What's going to happen? Your chairman's going to have a phone call from the bookkeeper saying the manager's in there, I'm asleep. What on earth's going on at this club? So that's the extreme level of it. You know, that's the extreme end. But you know, you must share this information. But try and think of 3 things, big or small, that you can do this week. It might be something you've heard today or something you've been thinking about that will improve your personal levels of well-being. And try then to list 3 things that you'll do next week, once you've sorted yourself out first, or you've started making improvements that will improve the well-being of your team. Something maybe in this presentation that you've heard today, something in some of the comments that you've heard today, an idea that you've heard from a member of staff in the past, and maybe because of whatever the situation was at the time, you'd sort of dismissed or not followed through on. Just 3 things, big or small, to improve the well-being of your team next week. And at the moment, that's especially important because a lot of your teams will be off furlough. So what can we do to start boosting that? So my final bit, some recommended reading and listening. So self-promotion is the best type. So on this topic, my podcast, the New Rules Club Management podcast, which you can get on all the places you download podcasts, episode number 1 with a guy called Simon Smith is really, really worthwhile listening to, particularly if there's anyone on this call that maybe does feel they're struggling a little bit at the moment. Simon's journey through this topic and through the other side, thankfully, is really interesting. It's from a golf club manager and somebody that has been very successful in sport in his life as well. But really, I listen back to it quite often, actually, whenever I'm having periods where I'm maybe not feeling the best. And some blog posts on my own on my website there. Blog posts 3 through 6 all sort of discuss things that we've maybe spoken about this morning. And one final word of wisdom. Gavin spoke about GCMA beforehand. If you're not already a member, then I can't speak highly enough of the improvement that GCMA has made to my well-being over the last 15 years. I've had some pretty torrid times, thankfully for short periods, in a couple of clubs, where the support from the network of GCMA members that I've come to know quite literally kept me sane, I think, particularly in one example. So if you're not a GCMA member, look into becoming one. If you are a GCMA member that maybe at the moment doesn't quite engage quite as often as you could in some of your regional meetings, you haven't maybe signed up to that regional WhatsApp group, you maybe don't attend as much training as you can, get involved, because maybe things are hunky-dory for you today, but there may come a time in your life where you look at a photograph and your world implodes and you think, my God, I need to change my life. And that group of people, I promise you, will be one of the big positives and one of the steps forward for you. So thanks for your time today. I'll now hand you back to Gavin. I'm sure we'll just finish off with a few more words about GCMA.
Yeah, that was great. I think there's an awful lot in there, an awful lot of of understanding what well-being is. First of all, I really like the diagram with the 7 circles, starting with physical activity. I think, if everybody could rate themselves not to 10 in each one of those. But I think there's an important point within that as well, that don't try and be perfect. Don't try and get 10 out of 10 in each of those, because that in itself will stress you out. So there's an awful lot in there. So thank you very much, Gareth, for your time today to join us. I'm just very briefly going to, I know everybody's sort of very busy, so very briefly, for those of you who are either in post at the moment or are joining us for the first time, we do a principles course. It's called Principles of Golf Club Management. And it's absolutely essential education or professional development for anybody who's either new in the role or looking to get into the role. And I do have briefly information pack on that, which I can send out to anybody on this call if they wish. And I'm just going to show that to you now, what that looks like, if I can find it. Nope, that's not it. Apologies for that. We'll get there eventually.
Wonders of technology, Gav.
Yeah, exactly. There we go. Okay, so this is the information pack that we send out to anybody interested in the course. Just a welcome to it. This is the course content. So you can see front and center, well-being and golf in the community. So that's one of our modules on the course. Price is there, some testimonials. And these are some of the speakers who we have on the course. Some new speakers, Suzanne Weeks from the hospitality sector, and Biddy Lloyd-Jones, who will be doing some personality profiling. We also got a new one in yesterday to replace myself on a leadership discussion called the Pacific Institute, So they'll be doing the leadership mindset, which should be a really good presentation. Sam Poole on digital marketing. I think he's quite well known. So, you know, the timetable's there, Monday the 8th of February to Friday the 12th. And we have all the how to register on that. So I'm quite happy to send that out to anybody who's interested, either for yourself or perhaps somebody on your team of staff. Don't be scared to send an assistant manager or a course manager or a pro on that course. They're not going to take your job just yet. But you know, it's all about you know, staff improvement and getting the most out of your staff. So I think I'll leave it there for today. Again, thank you very much, Gareth. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us today on this GCMA Inspire webinar, Essential Leadership Skills for Golf Club Managers. Thank you, and I'll stop the recording there, but we'll hang on for any questions or discussions after.